The big thing is you talked about 2020. In that season, he ran the most routes per game at tight end with 37. The special thing about this house was less than 50 yards outside their back patio, there was a like, family cemetery.
Welcome, everyone, to episode 3 of Playernormal Activity. I am your host, Kraig, and with me tonight on our third episode is a very special guest. You know him from Roto Heat. He is the founder and creator of Roto Heat, been a great mentor and friend to me over the past, it's almost 2.5 years now, I think. We got Rick Butts here. Rick, how are you doing this evening?
Doing very well, and I'm excited to be on the show. I've got to see the first two, and I think I have a good story for everybody.
Oh, awesome. We're excited to hear it. But of course, we're going to start off with a player. And the player you chose to talk about here is an interesting case himself in terms of an NFL career. We have Logan Thomas, currently of the Washington football team. Started off as a quarterback in college, was drafted as a quarterback in the 4th round by Arizona, bounced around Miami, the Giants, as a practice squad quarterback mainly. Switched to tight end in 2016 with the Lions and bounced around from there until landing with Washington, now the Commanders. But that was back in March of 2020 as a tight end when he broke out. So what interests you about Logan Thomas going into this year?
2 years ago, which seems like a long time ago because we've been dealing with COVID and everything else, but this was the tight end number 4. And we're looking at now he is like just a back end tight end 2 in Dynasty ADP on DLF and going around tight end 20, 18 in redraft. And he is coming off the ACL, but I just think that he's grossly undervalued right now, especially in redraft formats. But even if you get 2 to 3 years out of him at his current ADP in Dynasty, it's well worth that value. You know, this came up on stream and it kind of surprised me that he had fallen this far after just one year, did have some injuries, but looks like it's very possible for him to come back in week 1. So I think he's grossly undervalued at this point.
Yeah, in the 2020 season, I believe he had 72 receptions, like 670 yards and 6 touchdowns. To your point, that it was a great season and still is, because we have those sort of 3 or 4 names most people do the top of their head when there's tight ends they're looking for. And then it's a big jumbled mess after that. And this is a guy that has proven it. And there really isn't a whole lot behind him in that tight end room for Washington. There's John Bates, who was a rookie last year. Samus Reyes, who's an undrafted guy that was new to the team last year too. Do you see that anyone else might be potentially coming in here through the draft or remains a free agency to challenge him this year anyway?
That's really hard to gauge, especially at the tight end position. You know, you always joke with me about my Chicago Bears just loading up on all the tight ends. So you never really know, but I think that he's more athletic than probably anybody that's going to be available to them.
Yep.
Obviously, if they draft somebody, it takes time for tight ends typically to get acclimated to the NFL. The big thing is you talked about 2020. In that season, he ran the most routes per game at tight end with 37, and he was 4th with 6.9 targets. Those numbers were a little lower last year, but he still put up more than 12 points, fantasy points, PPR, 3 out of the 5 games that he played. He had a touchdown in 3 out of the 5 games that he played. He still averaged 5 targets. Now the difference is that we get Carson Wentz put into the equation. And Carson Wentz has targeted his tight ends 30% of the time since 2017. He's never been below 20%, which is where he was at last year with the Colts. I think that Logan Thomas is more talented than Jack Doyle, for example, who had 43 targets. And Mo Alley Cox is another guy that was a basketball player that is still getting acclimated to the tight end position, and he had 45 targets. I don't think anybody on Washington currently can eat into his production that much. He runs a lot of routes. He's on the field a lot for this team. And with Carson Wentz targeting the tight end at a 30% clip, there should be probably 70 to 80 targets conservatively in there for Logan Thomas, unless they bring in another receiver. Terry McLaurin's going to get his. And then I think Logan Thomas could possibly be the number 2 target on this team currently. But if they do draft a wide receiver, it could bump him to number 3, but the numbers should still be good for a tight end.
So looking at redraft leagues for this year, where would you feel comfortable taking him? I know you went over where he's currently going, and he seems like a guy you can really wait on. So is that a position that you feel like you're going to be willing to take, waiting for a player like him?
Regular, just one PPR tight end leagues, not tight end premium, I'll always wait on the tight end. So I'll love the value that you can get him at somewhere in between tight end 15 and 18, 20, where you've got the upside of a top 6 tight end there with Logan Thomas. Yeah, waiting will definitely be on the docket for me in redraft leagues because of that. Same goes in Dynasty if it's not a tight end premium. If it is a tight end premium, I wouldn't mind reaching around earlier than he normally goes to grab that, because we know once he gets healthy, he may not be ready for week 1, but it looks like he might be. So I guess we should be expecting him by week 2 or 3 at the latest. Once he gets in there, he's going to run a lot of routes for this team. And at the current time, they literally only have one other guy that we're confident is going to get targeted highly. So just the upside at the value that you get Logan Thomas for, I feel is just very strong.
Now, talking about his age, so he is going to be 31 this year. But we have seen players like him that maybe didn't come into the league playing football a whole lot or the position a whole lot with those large frames. He's 6'5" and 250-ish, like a Jimmy Graham, Antonio Gates with that athletic profile. Do you see him having another 3-4 years potentially? Because he's only really been playing tight end for, this will be his 4th year really, because he had a year at Detroit before he went to Washington, where he actually played in professional games.
Yeah, I mean, he does have less wear and tear on his body than, say, 32-year-olds like Travis Kelce and Rob Gronkowski. I'm not too concerned about 3-4 years down the road with Logan Thomas. I feel like at the price that you get him at, even in Dynasty, if you get 2022 and 2023 top 8, top 10 tight end value out of him, I think it's a win, especially if you win your league or at least get in the money in your league. The value there, you're not losing a whole lot at where you're taking him.
Is he someone then too, if you have a contending team in a league, then you're weak in tight end, that you'd be going out trying to target with what his value acquisition cost probably is at this point?
Absolutely. I feel like if on draft day, you might be able to send a late 3rd or a 4th round pick for him and get a guy that is plugged in your lineup week after week for at least this year and probably the next 1 to 2 years. That's just value that you don't normally find. But we know that people get excited on draft day and will take less for players just to be able to pick somebody off the board, especially if there's somebody there that like.
Yeah, there really isn't a whole lot in this tight end class either. There's Trey McBride that people feel like is going to be the first guy, and then there's a whole lot of potential. It seems like we probably say this every year with tight end, but there isn't, that surefire thing like a Kyle Pitts or anything close to that. And there probably isn't even going to be a first round tight end. There might not even be a second round this year, but people still always do get excited over those athletic profiles. A guy like Jelani Woods or Greg Dulcich coming up. So you may even be able to get a pick where you normally take that, to your point, and get Logan Thomas. I think would be great value too, especially for a guy that is going that low in most people's ratings and rankings. He isn't a tight end 1, but we know he has that potential. And from what you said earlier about Carson Wentz, we can probably expect a lot of targets for him this next year.
Yeah, and then that's what I like about targets. That's what I look for, is somebody that there's a lot of upside there to finish. Like we said, he was tight end 4 overall just 2 years ago, and he has that upside. But if you lose and he literally does nothing for you, then it's not like you lost a pivotal pick or a pivotal asset. Like you can probably get him if you do make a bigger trade as a throw in, just to create a roster spot for that other manager that you're trading with. So those are the types of trades that I like. There's not a lot. You don't find a lot every year where they could literally help you win your league, and they're grossly undervalued at this point.
All right. Well, I think that's a great one. And, we like to spread around whatever we talk about on the show is what the guest wants. And Logan Thomas isn't a guy that you've seen talked about a whole lot at all, despite there not really being a whole lot of competition at the tight end spot for the team currently, and also for other targets outside of Terry McLaurin and then whatever dump offs there may be in the passing game. So I think it was a great choice to bring up here. And hopefully everyone will be going out and take Logan Thomas a second look here, maybe, and seeing what they can trade away to get him for in a league where they're contending.
Yeah, if he's healthy, Carson Wentz is going to throw to him a bunch.
That is a question with Carson Wentz, of course, and who knows how long Carson Wentz will be there. But rookie tight ends too, or excuse me, if they get a rookie quarterback and they have one going forward, they like to use those tight ends as a safety valve too when they can. And Logan Thomas is a huge target that they can throw to.
Just 6'6", nothing much.
With that, we're going to move on from the football field to the Fortean. But before we do that, I want to thank everyone who's watching. If you're watching us on YouTube, thank you as always. Make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and have those notifications turned on so you can be aware that these are dropping every Friday at 12 p.m. Eastern. So if you don't remember that, the notifications will let you know. And they'll also let you know about all that great content that we have dropping during the course of every week over at RotoHeat YouTube. Your story tonight, Rick, is a haunting for the paranormal. So why don't you give us a little bit of a background of when and where this started for you?
This was 8th grade year, and it wasn't like my house or anything. It was a good friend's house. Lived out in the country here in Indiana, and the house was very old. So the special thing about this house was less than 50 yards outside their back patio, there was a family cemetery that was it was weird because there was like a field, and then there was this patch of like trees that was probably, man, it's been so long, but I would say it was probably like 30 by 30, like a square patch. And there was just headstones inside all these trees and just buried in grass and just very old. But the kicker was that this house probably built late 1800s, early 1900s, old brick house. There was actually a body buried in the basement. And in the basement, there were like right in the middle of the basement, there were these brick walls, like a square, and it had a headstone or a plaque on it that had the guy's name, when he lived, what he did, all this stuff. So I can tell you that all the times that I was at Brandon's house, I went in that basement one time and I was not going back. And I'm the kind of guy that I like go. We used to go out to old cemeteries at night and do dumb, stupid kid stuff. Like none of that stuff ever freaked me out. But this house was something else. So just typically at night, we would hear all kinds of noises, just like weird noises around his house, in his house, everything. But the big thing happened one night. The way their house was laid out was like at the front of the house that was closest to the road, had their living room. At the back of the living room, there were stairs that went upstairs to all the bedrooms. If you went out left in their living room, you would go straight into the kitchen. And then if you took a right, you would go back and there was like a back patio area where they had like a couch and this huge stereo system. If you remember the 90s stereo systems that had the big speakers and the 100 disc changer and all that. So it's a party spot of the house. This night, me and Brandon, his sister, and her friend were all sitting in the living room, and their parents and younger brother were upstairs sleeping. And we're just sitting there watching TV, talking, bullshitting. Out of nowhere, the stereo turns on full blast, like straight party mode. And literally, we all jump almost through the ceiling. Within 30 seconds, his parents are running downstairs screaming at us for turning on the stereo. And we're sitting in the living room like, we didn't touch nothing. Just like out of nowhere, and it turned on and it stayed on. And then when we started going towards the patio, it shut off, went dead silent. And then you just hear the weird, like out country. This is like literally an isolated house. Closest neighbors probably a half a mile away or whatever. And there's nothing. There's nobody to turn it on. And we literally about shit ourselves. But this type of stuff would happen at his house. Like nothing, like that was the scariest thing because it was so loud, because this was a massive stereo system. But TVs would turn on randomly. They would tell more stories of hearing footsteps and hearing noises from the basement, which is why I never went back down there, because it was just creepy that there was somebody buried in the basement, like in between brick walls. So that was the scariest thing that ever happened there for us. But we would, and I don't know if this part was just from us being kids, but we'd be out playing at night and we'd think we seen people and stuff, like, but never knew for sure. So I don't know if that was just our imagination playing into all the other stuff that happened in the house with the noises and the footsteps and the stereo turning on full blast. But that night, like, none of us slept. We just stayed up all night. Like, we were freaking out because we did not turn that stereo on. And his parents didn't even believe us that we didn't turn it on. They thought we were messing around with them. And so we got in trouble too, but it definitely wasn't us, and was definitely a creepy experience.
So how far away, distance-wise, was that stereo from where you guys all were?
I would say, I mean, it was probably 30 feet away, like, if you went, straight through the walls.
And it just how long do you think it was on for when it was you guys really weren't turning it on and off like you said, but you have a it probably seems longer when you think back over time, and as a kid, it
And
probably seems like forever, but
this was 25 years ago too. It was probably a minute, probably, but I don't know. His parents were in a dead sleep, came downstairs. We were too afraid to go to that side of the house because we didn't know
yeah.
if somebody came in the house, we didn't know what was going on. So us as 8th grade kids, we were just like, nope, not going over there. So it was probably at least 30 seconds to 45 seconds before we started walking towards that part of the house, and it shut off when we were probably halfway to that room.
Wow. Do you know if the people that owned the house had any relation to the people that had been buried there? Was it a family thing for the current occupants, or those people from, like, years ago that know?
No connection. And I wish that I don't even know if Brandon's parents still work there. We've lost touch over the years, but it would have been fun if I was still in connect with him to get some pictures of the gravestone in the cemetery, if it's still there. I don't know. They could have had it removed and stuff. That, like I said, that was 25 years ago, but it was both the cemetery and the fact that somebody was buried. I never believed him. Like, he would tell us all at school, and I never believed him that somebody was buried in his basement. And he told the story forever. And then I finally stayed the night at his house one time, and he took me down there, and I was like, I'm never coming down here again. And I seen the plaque and the headstone, and the way you could just tell the bricks, the walls, the little room that they created. This person was not like part of the house, right? Like, it was in the literally like dead center in the middle of their basement, just in a weird spot, like a shrine to must have been like the patriarch of the family or something that built the house, or I don't know. It's weird though. I couldn't imagine living in a house with somebody buried in the basement.
And did your friend ever say anything about did they have any idea why this person was buried there, or that's just the way it had always been and they didn't know anything really beyond that?
And they didn't have a lot of information on like why they did that. It was almost the king was buried in his basement, and then I'm guessing I can't be for certain because it has been so long, and I don't remember then if there were names or dates or anything on any of the headstones in the cemetery. But I'm guessing he was like the head of the family, and then the rest of the family was buried out there, and it was a family burial grounds right there on the family, 'cause it was probably a farm, like a farmhouse and stuff back in the day. My friends didn't farm, but that's probably why that house was built where it was built, just out in the middle of the country, dark back roads, just everything about that place was just eerie.
Yeah. Even and again, 25 years ago, you may not remember, but even before you like went down there to the basement to see all that and everything, did you get just a weird vibe get into the house to begin with?
I can't say for certain, and it's probably one of the first things we did when I got there because we always told him that he was full of crap. So
Yeah.
that was probably the first thing when I went to his house that he wanted to show me, because I told him forever that I didn't believe him. So I don't know how much I was in the house, but even as a 14-year-old kid, I was probably more arrogant about it, trying
Yeah.
to be tough and this doesn't scare me. But once I got into that basement, I knew it was different. I knew I didn't want to be down there. And then hearing the noises and everything else, I was like, nope, don't ever need to come down here again.
And so you went back to the house other times just to hang out
Oh
or
yeah,
whatever.
I stayed there all the time. Only one time did anything crazy like that happen where you heard the noises and stuff, and TVs would turn on randomly, but we always just chalked that up to people playing tricks on each other just to feed into the whole thing. Somebody with a remote, but the stereo had no remote. We were all in that room or upstairs. So unless somebody else came in and turned that stereo on, or they had a short circuit or something, we knew it wasn't any of us playing a joke on each other.
Yeah, that would scare the crap out of me almost quite literally. Like you said, I can't imagine just some I mean, I'll have hear a dog barking and it'll wake me up. I'm like, what the heck is that? But just a stereo full blast, that's something else, especially when you're out in the middle of nowhere. You said that the whole what is it, whether it's paranormal or a person factor, that makes your blood
Yeah,
run cold.
there was, whether it was a break-in or a ghost or whatever, we weren't going in that room until the parents came down. We were waiting for them before we went over to do anything.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it. And yeah, that definitely fits as something just scary. And who knows if it's just energy or if it is the ghost of someone that had been there before for whatever reason. But I do believe that there is something to energy having effect on the world around us, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. And sometimes those things just happen, and the unexplained really does just remain unexplained.
Yeah, I'm with you. I've got a couple other instances. I don't know if you want me to tell another quick one or save it for another episode, but I definitely 100% believe just because of experiences that I've had. It's hard for me to deny it.
If you got another short one, go for it.
My other buddy growing up, and we would have been in probably fifth or sixth grade at this point, but he lived in a house where an old couple passed away. And the old lady passed away in her bed in her room, and the old man committed suicide in the garage after she passed away. So they always told ghost stories and stuff. He had an older brother. So their parents go out. I'm staying the night at his house, and his parents go out for a date. And we're sitting down, and I remember it vividly. We're playing Mario Kart in the living room, and this would have been probably Super Nintendo or 64, one of the two. And we're sitting there, and next thing we know, them little like tricycles, not like the tricycles you see in the movies that are rolling, but it's like more like a tractor with big black tires on the back. One of them comes screaming down the stairs, and all of us that are at the house are in the living room, and we just figured the dog pushed it down the stairs.
Yep.
But we work up the courage to go upstairs, and somehow the dog got locked in a room. He's locked in the room, the old bedroom where the lady supposedly passed away. And the dog had been coming, like he had been hanging around with us. Either something else shut the door and locked him in there, or somehow he did it himself. But that freaking toy came screaming down the stairs, scared the shit out of all of us. There's probably like four of us, all like fifth grade plus his brother. And then the dog just locked in the room, and we have no idea. We opened up the door, the dog came running out, and that was basically it. But that was another little freaky one.
Jeez. Yeah, to your point, is it possible that the dog hit the tractor or whatever and went down the stairs and then went to a room and turned around and closed the door on itself or something? Of course, when you're talking about probabilities and likelihoods and all that sort of stuff, for all that just to happen in that short amount of time together, that's creepy no matter what, how you think about it. Then the circumstances surrounding that, what went on in that house, boy.
Yeah.
Did he have other stories too?
What?
Did he have other stories like that he'd told you about stuff that happened at the house?
I don't remember, but I'm actually still connected with this friend. I could actually get more information on if they had other stuff that happened and see if he has any differences in an account of this instance. But this is actually a house that's 10 minutes from me. I can actually get a picture of this house and we can put it in the video so people can actually see this house in the garage. I don't know if it's changed because it's a way that I don't normally go, but it is close to me. I can get a picture of it.
Yeah, that'd be great. And we can always have you back for a follow-up episode too or something if you get more info and find more stuff out, because that's to your point about creepy coincidences at a minimum, and feels like something beyond that given everything going on in that house and its history. Yeah, that I don't know at that age how I would have handled that, because that is something else.
Yeah, and I'll get some more info from Dustin. Maybe I can actually get Dustin to join us and tell some accounts from that house that maybe they had if they had other stuff that happened when I wasn't there. But that was another creepy house that was not fun to stay at as a kid, especially when his parents would leave us with the 14-year-old brother.
Yeah.
We'd be staying there by ourselves while they're out on the date night.
Jeez. Thank you, Rick, for sharing those. I appreciate it. Of course, we can find you over at Roto Heat all the time on Facebook, Twitter, Discord, but let everyone know where they can find you if they want to talk to you or connect with you personally too.
The easiest way is either through Discord, the Roto Heat Discord, and we can put the link in the description for that. And in Twitter, I'm real bad at Twitter, but normally I see my DMs or tags or whatever. You can hit me up in either of those spots. Those are the easiest, or Rick at rotoheat.com.
All right. And I want to thank you for coming on and talking about Logan Thomas with me and going over those stories. Those certainly are creepy. And let me know if you find anything more out from your friend Dustin about that house. I want to thank everyone for watching, listening, whatever you're doing. Again, make sure you hit that like button and get subscribed so when all this nice content is dropping for you. And remember that whether you are in search of poltergeists or player profiles, we will have you covered here on Playernormal Activity. Thanks again, everyone. Hey, thanks for watching. If you'd like more great fantasy football content like this, please click the link down below here.